Well, hello and welcome to today's episode of The Visible Workplace. My name is Dr. Tom Rowley, and thank you so much for joining me in this episode 17. And we're going to take a little bit of a diversion away from what we've been up to before and have a look at something a little different. That something different has been my last week. And instead of being in Byron Bay, which is a beach paradise, it's very nice. I like living here. It's pretty awesome. I instead joined 10 other people with a gentleman called James Kemp. And James ran a workshop last week called the Bali Blueprint. And this was a 3-day workshop for current clients, and there was a couple of people that had been on his list that came along. We had a great time. It was absolutely sensational. So we're going to talk about that today because there's a couple of really important takeaways that I took from it. First of all, well, my family came, and that definitely sets a different dynamic than going to a workshop when my family isn't there. It meant at nighttime that my energy and my experience was with them, learning about what they'd done, and they had a great time. One of the days they went over to Bingen, and this is a reef break. Now, my eldest son, has rapidly got into surfing over the last year and a bit. And this was his first reef experience, and it was spectacular. He loved it. He was like, "Dad, that was the greatest surfing day ever." We were staying at Canggu, and for those of you who have been to Bali, you'll know that's about a 2-hour taxi ride, even though you can look across the bay and see them. But for 2 hours, they sat down doing about 20 kilometers an hour in the Bali traffic and did have a great day. So learning about that, we ate really well. We had a great time. I'm really grateful that my family came. Couple of reasons. One is that living in the first world, particularly in a very scenic and special place that is Byron, my children don't really have a frame of reference for anything outside of that experience. And so going to Bali was their first experience. No, they have been there before, maybe 8 years ago, but they have not been for some time, and certainly not at this stage of development where they're like, okay, I'm pretty comfortable with how my life is. And to go over there and see the very interesting juxtaposition of a developing world beach paradise versus a first world beach paradise, it's great. The second thing for them, though, was exposure to entrepreneurs, exposure to business owners, people working out, hey, how do I want my life to be? And each of us had invested a significant amount of money to be there, and that was our investment to James, but also taking time off work and taking time to fly over, paying for hotels, all of that stuff. It's a significant investment to take that time. And so the immediate question might come to you, well, was it worth it? Was it worth it? And here's what's interesting. It was absolutely worth it. And for those of you who are regulars on doing workshops, you'll know that there are several benefits. One is dedicated time, where you're just sitting there focused, working on the workshop content and nothing else is going on. There are no distractions. It's like, hey, sit down for this day and we're going to get invested into this particular material. So that was there. Secondly, the community. The people that were part of the experience, as well as James himself. And this was great because we had a bus ride there and we're talking, discussing. On the way there, it's like, hey, what do you do? What's going on? How far have you come in the program? All of this sort of stuff. On the way back, it's like, whoa, what'd you take from that? So these bus rides that went for about 30 or 40 minutes, even though like you could probably walk 10 minutes, but it took 40 minutes because in Bali, they haven't seemed to connected many of the roads. These roads come down the hill, but there's only one road at the top. It's like I don't know, it's like, I'm not sure what that looks like, a hanging vine, but there's very few connections between. So it takes a long time to get to the next little valley. But this was a valuable time. And so we're chatting away and sharing experiences and sort of, hey, this is a problem that I'm facing, and other people would have solutions and problems that they were facing that I could say, hey, I've solved that. This is how this works. So this was really cool. This was a really special experience in itself, but that is relatively generic. What was interesting about the Bali Blueprint experience was the content. So day one was not spent on tactics, but it wasn't spent on strategy either. You might think, well, what else is there? If it's not tactics and not strategies, what the heck were you guys talking about? And what we were talking about was a concept of sovereignty, a mindset of sovereignty. And this was extremely valuable. This was a reminder to say, hey, I am responsible for what I create my life to be. I am the sovereign. I am in charge. And James shared a very interesting insight, which was that the marketplace will tell you what to do if you don't hold your boundaries. If you're choosing to be looking for, hey, I'm not sure what to do, then the marketplace will come in and say, hey, do this, do this, do this. And that might be very beneficial. I have invested heavily into many programs, paying money, investing time, investing energy, investing in homework, and then extracting out what works for me. Because becoming a carbon copy of anybody, well, it kind of negates your sovereignty. And we even got down to a very confronting idea. It's like, hey, Monday to Friday, working week is, I'm not sure when it got invented, but if we go far enough back, there probably was not, or there definitely was not a 7-day week. Maybe in the Bible, but the Bible had to be written down at some point. Before that, in ages forgotten, there's probably just the day, today, the moment. And so it's a little bit confronting. It's like, oh, by the way, the working week is a construct that you have been trained on and taught into and bought into. But if you want to work Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, that's totally cool. So this idea of sovereignty was very, very, very interesting. It was like, hey, I am in charge of my life and you are in charge of your life. And so the question that comes up is like, well, where have you let go of your sovereignty in your life? And so we were working on this at a mindset level and also at an implementation level. Well, what does that look like? And it's very interesting. It's like, well, James is saying, hey, you better get clear on what's important to you. What are your non-negotiables? And they might be relatively few. Perhaps it's saying goodbye to the kids, dinner together without electronics. Perhaps it's a certain number of hours that you work. Perhaps it's the type of work that you do. But this idea of sovereignty was extremely valuable. That in itself paid for it. It's like, oh, hang on, where am I giving away my sovereignty? Where have I allowed myself to not decide on what I want my week to look like? It's fascinating. One of the challenges that I've had is like, well, how do I go on holidays? And there's a couple of answers to that were very interesting. Again, on that bus ride experience, one was, well, hey, I just designed my life where I love helping. I love doing the work. So I don't really take holidays. I don't know this concept of holidays. And I get it. I was like, okay, cool. But some things require me to have time to myself or with my family, activities, travel. Now, like, well, block it out and train your clients that for a certain number of weeks per year, you will not be there. And this can be covered with team, or this can just be held with asynchronous communications. But the central idea was that sovereignty is extremely valuable. And it's very easy to allow others to come in and tell you what to do. Wake up at 3 a.m. and work through till 3 p.m., 12 hours, and then do another 4 hours of meetings. That might be a model, but it might not be what you want. But it might be what you want too. But you've got to answer that question. Well, what do I want? So this idea of sovereignty came through. The second extremely valuable one that I got was selling identity. And we were discussing, you've probably been in the game of business for a while. If you're listening to this podcast, you're like, if you're into skydiving, this is probably not calling you. But if you're into business, then you have these essential skill sets that are required, which are advertising and selling and fulfilling. And one of the key things that I have been trained on is that there's this kind of hierarchy of going from a problem that somebody has and saying, well, hey, I'm the answer that you're looking for. And that could be framed at a number of different levels. One could be the features of let's say it's a product, the features of the product. And that would be a very low level. It's like, okay, great, it's got this feature, it's got this feature. It's like, okay, yeah. And then we go up and there's the benefits of those features. And then we go up a little bit more in the solution. And then we go up a little bit more and there's the results that I get. I've got a problem and I'm buying results. And this is what I had been largely trained on. This was a significant insight for me at the time. It's like, oh, we're not just doing features and benefits. I thought that was enough. No, results. Results is what we want. But here's a beautiful distinction that came through. We discussed the idea of selling identity. Who do you become by joining a program? Who do you become by joining my program? Who do you become by joining another program? And this had a richness to it, a very deep attraction of selling the identity of who you become. Now, as we discussed just before, it's not to become a carbon copy, but it's to extract out the elements of that identity that you want. And paying for this suddenly became very clear. I was like, oh, this is what I've been buying. A lot of products that I bought, but I am seeking the identity that those products were promising with the results. If I had those results, then this is who I would be. And so focusing on the identity was extremely attractive, and putting it into a magic boards experience, obviously visual workplace, we're commonly talking about the magic boards design. Well, what do I become? Well, I become powerful, I become calm, I become focused, I become free, I become responsive, I become able to listen, optimistic, confident. There's a whole host of benefits to getting work done using magic boards. And you could say, well, the result is that you have more time and that you make more money, but this is still at the results level. But this identity, that was rich for me. And for others as well, like, oh wow, this is really opening up. So the question is, what level are you selling at? Are you selling at features? Are you selling at benefits? Are you selling at solutions? Are you selling at results? Are you selling at identity? Who do they become by becoming part of your community, becoming part of your business? Very powerful insight, I thought. I was like, whoa, this thing's delivering in spades. Then we came to a very interesting idea. So the third big idea from this was redesigning the calendar to have a particular feature, and that is white space. Actually allowing enough time during the week for inspiration through, for perhaps rest, perhaps meditation, perhaps exercise, perhaps the channeling of work to get done. And if the calendar is jam-packed, then there is no space for this. And this to me was a very powerful idea as well. A third powerful idea. It's like, whoa, okay. So glad I went to this thing. and that you might well be able to benefit from this as well. That this idea of the white space allowing for creativity, for rest, for exercise, for whatever the moment is requiring. And this means that you must have boundaries installed. It's like, no, this is where I'm going to hold the boundary. I'm not going to fill that time. I'm not going to allow others to come in and say, hey, I want that time. And it's very interesting because this has a cost to it. You might well get propositioned for say, hey, I want this. And a customer comes in or a client comes in and you're like, no, I'm sorry, that is non-negotiable. That is not available. And that has a very interesting, it has two consequences. One is the cost, abundance and prosperity required to hold a space, to hold a gap and say, you know what, this is what my week looks like and there is open space. And it might well be that you choose to go, you know what, I've got a block of 4 hours. I'm going to put 2 hours here, 2 hours here and sell those. Then these might be at a premium because they are not always available. So all of these three ideas were extremely powerful. If you want to go and check out James Kemp, then you can search him up. I believe his main website is swipemyblueprints.com. And then he's living in Bali at the moment. Really, really great marketer, highly valuable. And if you get the opportunity to go to the Bali Blueprint, then I'm going to say yes, absolutely go. All right, that's all I got for you today. I hope you are having an awesome day. If you want to check out Magic Boards, then head over to www.magicboards.io. That's www.magicboards.io. Thanks so much for joining me. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Remember to hit like, hit subscribe, and share this up with any entrepreneurs and business owners that are struggling with how to get the work of their business visible. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The Visible Workplace very soon. Thanks for joining us at The Visual Workplace. This is a notification that the information and ideas discussed here are general in nature and do not take into account your specific circumstances. You should seek specialist advice for any medical, financial, emotional, mental, or other difficulties that you are facing with appropriate specialists and professionals so that they can apply your specific circumstances and give you the required advice. Thank you for joining us, but this is also a notification that all information is indeed general in nature and not specific for your personal circumstances.